Boo, boo, ba, 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 da, ba, boo, da, boo, boo. Have I told you the one about? Welcome to yet another evening of glorious storytelling magic. One of my favorite people, I say this every time, but I have a lot of favorite people because there's so many amazing people in the world. You might doubt me, but it's only because your heart is darker than mine. Mine's full of love, and so everybody is amazing. This person is really one of my favorite people. She's a master storyteller. So let's call in my imaginary friend on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Poof! It's Erin, motherfucking Scott, people. Hi, Erin.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Michael.
I'm going to take my glasses off because that was just for dramatic effect. And then now we can look into each other's eyes.
Well, I'm glad that we're able to stare deep into each other's eyes, even from a distance.
What do you mean a distance? You're right beside me.
Oh, yeah, right. I totally forgot. I just poofed in there.
You're just not used to being other places. It's sort of like every day feels like, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you just cross out the beginning. It's day, day, day. Every place feels like the same place.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. But it's nice to be in your home with you here. So thank you for having me, for inviting me.
This morning I told my husband that today feels like every other day, only sadder. But it's really good to see you. That cheers me up.
It's good to see you too. It's nice to be here and to share and to hear your little singing intro. I really like that.
I've been practicing my voice.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. Lots of good things happening while in quarantine, I bet.
Okay, so my story portal is open. Do you want to send your story to me?
Sure, I would love to send it. I'm just going to prepare it, and here we go. Prestidigitation!
Ooh, that went right through my genitals.
I bet it did. It's a very powerful word. It's actually the original word for presto that magicians would say.
What's that?
Prestidigitation.
Prestidigitation?
Yeah.
That's a real word?
It's a real word. Yeah. I learned that
Spell
word.
it.
Years, Prestidigitation. Prestidigitation.
Well, I think you've convinced me.
I heard about it years ago when I was in Los Angeles and was so fortunate to go to the Magic Castle.
Oh, man. I tried so hard to go to that.
It's so amazing. And so when you go in there, it looks like you're in an old library and it's a very small room. But obviously it's this giant mansion that houses many different performance spaces and bars and a restaurant. But you have to say to this little bookshelf, prestidigitation, and it scoots its way across and enters to a dark hallway, and you walk in and suddenly you're kind of in this like 1920s underground environment where everybody has been invited or are paying members to be there, and it's just magicians and magic and 7 bars, and it's like one of the coolest places I've ever been able to experience. So, and that was where I learned that word and became like totally enamored by the word prestidigitation.
I'm drooling. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty fantastic.
Well, so far, this is my best intro ever. I've never had an intro. People are dying to know what the story is. I'm going to prestidigitation this title. You are going to tell us about the After 8 heist.
I sure am. Yeah, I'm gonna take it back to, I don't know what year this would have been. I was probably maybe 9 or 10 years old, so about the age of my oldest daughter now. And we lived in Calgary, Alberta. My dad's whole side of the family are from there. And so my grandma, she's got 5 kids. So my dad and his 4 siblings. And then all of them have children. And so we would gather always at my grandma's house for really big family celebrations.
Right.
And my grandma is she's a prairie girl. So she grew up in a big family as well and knows how to cook everything and then some. And we would have just huge feasts. And she was particularly good at making all kinds of treats. And I do have to say that I, much like you, Michael, love treats. I particularly chocolate, like anything chocolate, I will just swoon over.
I gave
But
up alcohol and I said, fuck that. I'm eating all the sugar I want.
I remember you saying that to me one time. You said, what vices do I have left, Erin?
I can't even grow a new fucking haircut. Like, I don't get to spend money. And I do have brand new earrings that my husband bought me today.
Oh, that's very nice.
But it's true. You run out of vices.
Yeah, you do. So one of mine forever has been the sweet stuff, and I always remembered that typically they'd get brought out around Christmas time or Thanksgiving when we would all gather. But after all of the food had been consumed, so we'd have appies and we'd have dinner, and then we would have these desserts, and she would make every kind of dessert you could imagine. People would be so stuffed, but then of course the coffee would come out. And she would always, my grandma would bring out those little green and black boxes of After Eight, like dessert mints.
My grandmother did that too.
Chocolate coated, right? Yeah, it's like a grandma thing.
Yeah.
But
and they always felt so nice because they were just these little sticks, right? You'd smoke them like a cigarette, and
totally. So I just loved them. I thought that they were the greatest little candy treat ever, and never really had them much. And it seemed that there was some kind of protocol around eating these things. It wasn't like all the other desserts. It was like you had one or two of them the way you would a mint, even though to me they were just like the most delicious treat ever. Why can't we eat a whole bunch of them? And so this one
totally
year,
get it.
What's that?
I totally get it.
Yeah, and so this one year we were over there, and one of my dad's brothers was dating this woman, and we had kind of just started to get to know her. And my uncle, has a bit of a history. He's an interesting guy. He's struggled with alcoholism. He's been in and out of jail. And so this woman was sort of very well suited to him. She also was kind of interesting, and I didn't get the greatest vibes from her as a little girl. So I was not very into her, but she was there to make an impression and connect with the family, and it was kind of a big thing that she had been brought over. And so I don't know how I got left alone in the room with all of these, probably upwards of 40 people in the house, and it's not a very large house. But I did. I was at one point, I found myself alone with the pack of After Eight mints.
Dream come true.
And I loved this little black backpack that I took everywhere at that time, and I would stuff things into it constantly. And so I had this little black backpack with me, and I just thought fast. I was like, there's no one in this living room. Now is my time to take all of these After Eights and shove them into my little black backpack. And that's exactly what I did. I took almost all of them,
So you took them out of the box. You didn't take the whole box.
No, I took as many out of the box without it looking suspicious. Because as a child, you need to kind of be strategic.
The devil teaches you well if you listen.
Right? You gotta make it so it looks like, wow, the family just really was into the After Eights tonight. So I get them all into the bag, and this is still pretty early in the night, and nobody says anything. The After Eight box gets put away. We continue. We always would, at the end of all these gatherings, we'd play Trivial Pursuit. And it was the old version, so none of the young people could even know any of the trivia because it happened so far before any of us were born.
Right.
So I always remember my grandpa just being the greatest Trivial Pursuit master of all time.
But it's only because he'd lived longer than everybody else.
Exactly. He was born in 1925, and he knew all of it.
And you don't know that as a kid. You just feel like you're stupid and everyone else is smart, and you don't realize they're not smart. They're just old.
Exactly. And he was a very quiet person, so suddenly in these game settings, he knew everything. So I always tried to be on his team, but we kind of get through the night and everything's fine. I think for a moment I even forget that the After Eights are in there. I may or may not have had a history of taking treats when I shouldn't have, and my family I was just telling my daughters the other day that my family used to have to hide all of the granola bars and the like fruit snacks from me because I would just like eat all of them in one sitting and there'd be none left for the school days.
My mom tells this story of how when we moved in with my stepdad, we always had a rule in my family: you were only allowed to eat one piece of fruit unless they were apples, because apples were cheap. But
Yeah.
you were only allowed one banana a day. And my mom still, she said it to me like a month ago. 30 years ago, I hid a banana in the kitchen because I wanted it for my breakfast the next morning. And my stepdad got up and went to work early because he worked in a mill. And my mom still talks about me hiding that banana. So, you
Yeah,
know,
no, it's funny. People remember if you're a food hoarder or a food thief. Like, it goes down
a food
in,
thief. I never thought of it that way before. I wasn't thieving. It was they didn't belong to anybody. They belonged to everybody.
you were bogarting it.
It's a food glutton, thank you. Okay.
But I had this, the same kind of thing going on of people knowing in my family that I loved treats, and so they would have to hide them from me. But the night comes to an end and we're preparing to leave and go home. And my grandparents' house, they had this sort of really beautiful, quite large entranceway. And so we were standing there and we were saying goodbye to everybody. And right at that moment that we were about to leave, so was my uncle and this new girlfriend of his who I didn't really like very much. And I was walking out past them and saying goodbye and not wanting to hug anybody because I was 9. And just as I was about to leave, I tripped on this little rug and I was holding my little black backpack full of After Eights right in front of me, and it opened and all of the After Eights flew out all over the entranceway in front of everybody that was there to say bye to all
Behold
of us.
my gluttony.
Yeah, exactly. And this woman just started cackling and making all these comments to me, and I was on the ground like I didn't want to give them up. I was shoving them back into the backpack like, don't take my After Eights from me.
They're mine, precious. They are mine. My chocolates.
And she just made these comments, and then we left, and I had this like hatred for her because she mortified me. And every single year, still, we were just back there in the summer when my grandpa died, and the entire family still, every time a box of those After Eight mints gets pulled out, they're like, "Oh, Erin, do you want some After Eight mints? Are you hungry? Do you need any of these? A couple for your bag before you leave?"
You need to go there with your own box.
Something. I need some kind of redemption because it feels like
a box for everybody else and a box for you.
I did this year. We hosted Christmas dinner at our place, Cole and and I did serve the After Eights, and oh my god, I feel so bad saying this. I had to buy a new box because I ate all of them before Christmas dinner.
It just goes to show you a leopard can't change its spots.
No, they're like my vice of all vice, and it's like, deeply ingrained in me now that like not only do I want to eat all of them to myself, but I need to like hide the fact that I'm eating them all to myself.
I make note of it for your next birthday party.
Yeah.
I'll bring 2. I'll bring a box for you, and I'll bring a box for everybody else.
Yeah, there you go. That's the way. And they're not big. It's not like they're big, huge. It's not like I was eating 12 candy bars. But man, I could put those After Eights away. And so that's the tale of the After Eight heist and my long-standing kind of place in my greater family as a treat thief.
I love it. I love those historical, the family history that the family accumulates these stories. One year at Christmas, my grandfather always loved sweets too, my grandpa Cooper.
Yeah.
And so whenever you asked him, my grandmother would make a million treats. She'd make all those cookies with the M&Ms or Smarties on top, which nobody liked. The batter in them was terrible. We would just pick the chocolates off and eat them and throw the
Right.
cookies out. Anyways, but if you ask Grandpa after he'd had two helpings, he was skinny as a rail. He'd have two helpings of food, enormous meal, and you'd say to him, "Grandpa, we have these three kinds of pie. Which would you like?" And he'd say, "Oh," as if he just thought of it. He'd say, "Oh, I think maybe I just want a little piece of all three." And so you'd give him a little slice of all three, and he'd have, all three desserts. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. So at Christmas one year, my grandfather was eating gummy bears after the meal. And so he was eating a couple gummy bears and he stopped eating them. He only ate, like, I don't know, a handful or whatever. He'd never had them before. And then we just sat around the dinner table for like an hour laughing and talking and whatever. And Grandpa kept coughing. He would cough, and we thought maybe he had a cold. And after an hour, he coughed up into his hand a gummy bear. And he looks at it and he says, "Well, there's the gall darn thing." We were like, "Grandpa, that was stuck in your throat for an hour?" He's like, "Yeah, I was having trouble swallowing it."
And like, did he not chew?
Well, this is it. And it was the same year my grandmother caught on fire.
What?
Grandma Cooper caught on fire. And
Like,
she,
was it at like a big dinner?
well, there were just like, it was my crazy Uncle Bob and my grandparents and the four of us. But Grandma leaned over. She was wearing a ruffly, she always wore at fancy dinners, she wore this ruffly white apron that had these frills around the outside. And she leaned in to get something and she touched a candle and the candle started to burn the lace. And my
Oh,
mom said, "Grandma, or Mom, you're on fire." And my grandma said, "Oh, whatever." Like probably thinking like, "This meal, Mom, you're on fire. You really got
right.
this meal." And my mom was like, "No, Mom, you're on fire." And the flames were licking up the side of her. She had to pat her boob to put the fire out.
Oh my god.
And we talked about that. We still talk about that story, right? You still talk about the gummy bear, Grandpa Cooper's
Yeah.
gummy bear.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I
Yeah,
love these
the
things.
family, like, and they're kind of unique often. Like, they're not necessarily exchanges that happen all the time. So they're like these really interesting, like, markers, like you said, in the family history. But they like, you know, they build bonds and they break bonds. Like I detested that woman. I can't
Oh,
even
yeah.
remember her name now, but she was on the scene for 3 or 4 more years, and I approached and went through puberty, and therefore was even more mortified when she would like bring it up. But she never let it go. It was like she thought that was the funniest shit she'd ever seen in her life. And now as an adult, I probably would do something very similar if one of my kids did something kind of hilarious like that. But
Well, little did she know how much more trouble you were going to get into in future years.
it's true. Like she probably like saw a bit of herself in me and was like, "Oh yeah, I recognize this." And I have 2 siblings, 2 brothers who don't like treats at all. And so it was this kind of this forever sort of dynamic between us where special occasions would come and go, like Halloween or Easter, and I would just go through all of my candy in like a day or two, just fucking fiendish about it. And then it was like, how long do I have to wait till I eat their candy as well? And
how long until it becomes abandoned?
Right, exactly. You're not going to eat that in 2 weeks.
It's been sitting there for 5 days. You haven't even touched it. I've been tracking your eye movements, and you haven't even looked at it in 24 hours.
No, exactly. And my older brother, bless him, he doesn't really have a similar sweet tooth to me, but still likes candies. And so his thing was that he always liked like gummy candies, which I can take or leave. And then he also really loves white chocolate. And so we had this like unspoken pact for years in our life that he would leave whatever he wasn't going to eat, he would leave it on his dresser. He never gave it to me, and he never told me I could have it, but it was left out full well knowing I was going to, at some point, the little after 8 thief was going to come looking in the room like a little pig,
Oh, that's so sweet.
I would then eat and I would leave the white chocolate that I wasn't going to eat on his dresser and take the rest of his, especially at Easter. I remember him doing it for years with me.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love that story.
Yeah, so people like learn. Cole still, like, if I'm having a bad day, it's like, oh, I think you need a treat.
That's
and
your
he
partner.
always kind of laughs at how, my mom's Scottish, and so everything's a treat. It's not like I'd like a piece of chocolate or this very kind of like British colloquialism of like, I need a treat to like get me through the day.
Well, I'm at that part of the point in the pandemic where every night is an ice cream night, because I usually only eat ice cream on the weekends.
Yeah.
And because I have diabetes in my family, and
Yeah,
so
me
I
too.
try very hard to monitor my sweets and I have a very addictive personality. But now ice cream's become a comfort food and a little vice, and so every night is, oh God, I really need this.
And cake. You guys seem to be making a lot of cake. You guys, like, you've
Not
been driving
me.
me a little crazy over here. You're right, not you. You have not been.
Somebody delivered donuts today.
Oh, who? And what?
Oh, my friend Chantal, she dropped donuts off. We bought these earrings from our friend to try. We're just trying to float businesses, like.
Yeah.
And our friend, so we bought these, and because we bought earrings from our friend and we paid her full price, even though she tried to give us a friend discount, even though she shouldn't be because her store. Anyways, she brought us donuts to thank us for buying things from her store.
That's so lovely.
I know, people are so nice.
Yeah.
They were probably donuts she got, and she was like, I don't want these. They're probably re-gifts. I don't care. Did that fall? Did you put that in the garbage and decide to give it to me? I'll eat it. Has it got sugar in it? Sugar doesn't know what garbage is.
I had a friend who told me one time that she was just so hooked on those like Dad's peanut butter cookie rings. Do you remember those things?
Oh, yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Like, you do?
They little
with the
crumbly
chocolate.
cookies and yeah.
Yeah. And she said that she would buy a box of them and then she would eat like 6 of them in a row and be like, fuck, I can't eat all of these. And so she'd throw them in the garbage, and every time she would go back through the garbage and pull them all out and fucking eat them. She was like, I can't. So she said now if she ever has them, she has to like put them out in the outdoor trash or not at all let them in the house. And my thing is, just eat the whole box of cookies. Like, it's okay.
Well, that's it. Right? It's just fuel.
It's all gonna be okay. You go for a good walk, you eat a good fucking healthy dinner, and it all balances out.
Eat the fucking box of cookies if you want to. I look at the food now and I say, you know what? I might not be able to eat this tomorrow. I might be dead.
Yeah, totally. I'm there with you.
I am not dying with ice cream in my freezer. I'm just telling you. I'd be like, wait a minute. Do I still have some? Get me a bowl.
That'll be your last food that we bring you. Will be ice cream.
Well, it's a good one too, right? It's very soothing. It's easy to swallow.
Exactly. You can make healthier versions of it. There's a wide variety. Did you know that in LA there is a ice cream museum?
No.
It's an entire museum dedicated to the history of ice cream.
I've been to LA. Nobody told me that.
I know, and there's a huge sprinkle pit that you can roll around in, which now seems very dangerous considering.
Oh, that's true.
COVID,
that sounds kind of gross.
But also a pretty cool thing to behold all and everything ice cream, which is it's a pretty big thing in Los Angeles, actually. Now that I think
say
about
that
it.
slowly.
Ice cream, frozen yogurt, that kind of thing is pretty big down there.
Everything ice cream.
Ice cream doesn't do it for me.
No?
No, it's like the one, but I have dairy is not good for me, so I think that's a part of it. So
well, I'll bring you after 8s and you bring me pints of ice cream.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Parlor, which you introduced me to,
it's an ice cream shop in
they have
Kelowna.
Great vegan ice cream. So that's like I can get down on some like really yummy vegan ice cream that doesn't just like taste like coconut and shit, like man.
Okay.
You can tell that you and I like to smoke weed and eat treats. That's literally all we've talked about here today.
Weed? My mother watches this show. I've never smoked weed a day in my life.
it's legal now. We have to get over our.
It's
our,
true.
like,
No, it's true. I
lifelong
smoke weed all the
stigmatized
time. In fact, I had to smoke before I talked to you. It's the
I
only.
bet you did.
Okay, so we're evolving with big D's. That is that is the After Eight heist with the amazing and talented, and she's going to come back because she's got all kinds of stories, and we love to talk. Erin, thanks for joining me, Erin.
Thanks so much for having me, Michael.
So you audience members can click the notification bell and it'll tell you when we go live, which is 8 Pacific every night. You can send me messages. Nobody's sending me things anymore, so this is just, look, michaelvsmith.com. And who knows who's going to be tomorrow, because we're just flying by the seat of our pants. And that's it. How's that, everybody? You want to give a big kiss out to the audience? Mwah. Bye, bitches.
Bye.
Thanks for coming, sweetheart.